loud enough at the back there. Can you hear me way across the other side? God, aren't they unbearably annoying, these people? All they do is attempt to silence you. They never engage in debate because, as Jane says, they've no facts on which to talk to us. My name is Mary Howden. I'm from the Women's Rights Network. We're a grassroots network of women across the UK, and we are there to kind of look at things to do that we can do to protect women's rights, but also safeguarding children. I'm also a social worker. I worked for many years as a mental health social worker. I worked with women who were survivors of childhood sexual abuse for about 15 years, and in that time I never saw anybody who thought that they were or should be the opposite sex. What I did see was a lot of women who were traumatised by what had happened to them, and disliked their body as a consequence of that. But I never ever saw anyone say, I'm a man. It's only in recent years that this has happened. So in our schools, Jane was talking there about the fact that we have transgender guidance which promotes social transition. So what does that actually mean, social transition? And suddenly my arm seems to be shaking badly, not sure why. So social transition is a thing that is promoted in our schools. What's the problem? I've heard people say to me, what's the problem with using pronouns? What's the problem with changing your name? What's the problem with dressing differently? And that's all being promoted in our schools as being something that actually we should engage. So somebody can go up tomorrow and say, I really feel like I'm a boy, I was born in the wrong body, and you all have to acquiesce now and say that that's what I am. And that, what? And that's actually what's happening within our schools. Well, it is a problem, and it's a problem for a number of reasons. It's not actually harmless. A recent study by Olsen et al. In 2022 said that after 5 years of this gender affirmative approach, there were 40% of those who had socially transitioned were living as transgender, 2/3 using puberty blockers or sex hormones to transition, leading our children into irreversible medication for life. And I wonder who benefits from that. It's certainly not the child. The other thing I want to do is I want to talk about, I want to read out from someone an example of what happens to a family when this happens behind their back. So I'm going to read to you now a parent's contribution. My daughter, a former pupil of George Watson's College, Edinburgh, when she was 13, she announced she was non-binary, changing her name, and that the school said there was nothing we could do about it. This turned out to be true, with the school immediately adopting her new name, despite our request to hold off until we could obtain professional clinical advice. This is a school refusing to listen to professional clinical advice. There was no discussion about pronouns at this time, but 2.5 years later, we discovered during the formal complaint process that she had also changed her pronouns to they, them at school a few months later. The following school year, when she was 14, she told her year head she was now a boy and wanted to use he, him pronouns. The school did not inform us of this change, but they did pull her older brother into a meeting where he was told, in confidence, now think about this is a brother going into a meeting about his sister, and the school saying, don't discuss that with anyone. That is absolutely shocking. It is grooming, you're absolutely right. That his sister was now a boy at school, he was left with the burden of either keeping this secret or telling us. He eventually did tell us. The school ignored the clinical advice we obtained against supporting her social transition, and instead eventually referred us to social services, saying she was at the threshold for child protection because there is a concern about their well-being and or safety in relation to how the child's exploration of gender identity is being managed. They claimed this had put her at risk of suicide and self-harm. We later found out that the deputy head also told the principal George Watson's college contacted social work as concerned about the effect of the parent suppression of daughter's wish to transition. Now, understand what's going on here. This is social work being asked to come in because the parents in this situation wanted to follow clinical advice that the school didn't agree with. Social services interviewed me and my daughter, and they said they agreed with the clinical advice that there was no role for them. And in their view, the school was creating division. The school chose to ignore this, and after going through the full formal complaint process, we withdrew our daughter from the school on safeguarding grounds. The school claimed the year head asked us for our daughter's medical notes when I first raised the advice with him. This is untrue, and we found that he admitted at the meeting, making it clear he and the school would ignore the advice, stating, "Mum and Dad absolutely do not endorse daughter using masculine pronouns, and it will be bad for daughter's mental well-being." She said that their previous psychologist had agreed. The year head emphasised to Mum that we have a daughter's best interest and well-being at heart, and that we will be respecting his wishes to use the masculine pronouns. The Scottish Government transgender guidance to schools had a direct impact on us, and while it was not in place at the time of our daughter's non-binary or male announcements, the school was and remains an LGBT Youth Scotland Gold Award holder, and as such they followed the LGBTYS guidance, which was a precursor to the current Scottish Government guidance. At one point, LGBTYS held a teacher training session with the school where the trainer announced the LGBTYS guidance was going to be adopted as the official Scottish Government advice. Watson's ensured the school's LGBT club, including my daughter, without my knowledge, were able to attend this teacher training session where the trainer discussed reverting back to legal name in front of unaware parents at Parents' Night. When we complained, the school repeatedly fell back on the Scottish Government guidance as justification for their approach. We were told George Watson supported daughter as they have shared their wishes, as the school is advised to do so in accordance with Scottish Government guidance for schools. Now remember, this is guidance. This is not legal. This has no legal basis whatsoever. It is guidance. And to deviate from the current guidance and legislation the school is obliged to follow was not an option. Well, it was an option. They just chose not to take that option. Watson has continued to double down on their position with internal guidance stating that once a child turns 12, it is their decision as to whether or not their parents are told about any change of name or pronouns at school. The Scottish Government guidance has had a devastating impact on so many Scottish families. As parents, we spend our lives doing our utmost to support our children, helping them hopefully to grow up to be happy and healthy, independent adults. When you have a child with significant difficulties or a complex background, whether it is from trauma such as abuse, assault, mental health problems, or being bullied and ostracised at school and so on, or an autistic child or one with ADHD, there is an even greater role and responsibility for parents to provide support and guidance. Parents expect schools to work with them in partnership, and it is my belief this generally happens, and this support makes dealing with these issues easier for parents. For whatever reason, gender identity issues are dealt with differently. Excuse me. That wouldn't be good on the camera, would it? A running nose. Issues are dealt with differently. This makes the whole situation greatly more difficult for parents who have to deal with both the previous underlying issues, which have not magically disappeared, as well as the new gender identity issues. And I think that's a really important point, that children who are expressing concern about their bodies often have, as Jane and Sam alluded to, often quite complex traumatic issues that they're having to deal with. So, however, they are also now trying to support a child who's being given the message by their school that their parents are not supportive of them because they do not affirm the gender identity. Instead of being able to fully focus on the child, the parents now need to spend inordinate amounts of time trying to persuade the school to listen to their concerns. The child's sense of stability within the family unit is destabilised as these teachers undermine the relationship between the child and their parents. This then leads to a whole host of additional issues and mental health problems. If this were any other issue, schools would not deal with it in this manner. All of this is driven by the Scottish Government guidance to schools, and it harms both children and families. We are now seeing NHS England recognising the importance of treating social transition with caution and the need to fully involve parents in any decision. They say supporting a social transition without the involvement of parents or carers can create complex difficulties within families and is not recommended. Why are Scottish children less deserving of safeguarding? Indeed. Our experience at George Watson's was not one I would wish on anyone. It has had a devastating impact on us. I would urge parents to find out what approach their own school takes when a child announces their trans identity. If their policy is to keep secrets from parents and insist that they must support social transition, please push back. Too many schools have lost their way when it comes to safeguarding gender-distressed children. It's left to parents to press for change. So you can see from that what a devastating impact this has. So what I would like to do today is I would like to ask Glasgow, why are they perpetuating these lies? Why are they creating a culture of secrecy, lies, pain, trauma, not only for the child and the family, but for every other pupil in that school? If you're teaching children to lie, what is the outcome of that? You cannot, on a school basis, encourage lies as a way of going forward. So why, Glasgow, are you doing that?